Tonight promises to be a wonderful night of conversation. By way of introduction, my name is Reverend Dr. George Walter Slayer. I am the pastor of People's AME Church, and I've been here since 2021. It's been a wonderful experience just being here. And we are quite excited about the event planned for this weekend. A consensus was reached that we begin to recognize and talk about our existence, people's existence in Chelsea since 1877. And how do we do that? How do we embark upon that? And how do we celebrate it to the extent to which we can highlight some very pertinent information and raise the consciousness regarding the existence of the church, the existence of black folks in Chelsea, raise the question about inclusivity, race, put those things on the table as people of Chelsea. So tonight, it's one of those conversations that we will be having. However, we'll also be celebrating tomorrow. And we're going to be having a wonderful dinner, good soul food, good music. So please don't miss it. The food will be great. I just want to emphasize that. So please, come hungry if you can. Before we call our panelists, I want to acknowledge the following individuals. Jose Erajita, Community Partner. Molly Baldwin, Executive Director of ROCA. Of course, we've got the Chief of Police here. We'll be talking about him later on. But we are quite excited that he's here. We also have Dr. Aaron Jinnis, a DER officer, who is here as well. We have Jen Hassel, Executive Director of Chambers of Commerce. Ricky Villanes, Chelsea Commerce, Cable TV. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight. Now, before we get into it, I want to welcome our panelists. And you send the flyer. I believe that these individuals come to the table with a wealth of information, knowledge, and not only that, but a sense of consciousness with respect to where Chelsea is, and where Chelsea will be tomorrow, what Chelsea ought to be. So I'd like to call on the first person, our city manager, Fidel Montes. Please put your hands together. Roseanne Bandovini. Joanne Cromwell, President of Chelsea and Roseanne, Executive Director of Green Roots. I want to welcome the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Abeta. Also want to welcome to the table our State Representative, Judy Garcia. I want to begin with a word of prayer, and we'll ask our church evangelist. You know her as a politician, but she is our church evangelist. Sister Deborah Washington.
All heads bowed, please, as we do a little prayer before we open our meeting. Dear Father God, we just come before you, Father, standing in the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Father, send your Holy Spirit down upon our spirit, move among us, open our mind and our heart as we come together on a discussion of people in the city of Chelsea. We are tonight talking about the Black experience, the Black history of those people who reside in Chelsea for many, many generations. Let us have a nice, peaceful, friendly discussion, Father God, because we are all really family here in the city of Chelsea. So bless everybody here, bless their families, Father God, bless their children. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, amen. Amen.
I want to welcome Pastor Myrna. Pastor Myrna is the pastor of the church, of this church here. And it's a United Methodist Church transitioning. But we have been in the church here, People's AME, People's African Methodist Episcopal Church, for several years. I would say several decades. And we are very grateful the fact that they have allowed us. So our space is on the other side. Okay, so please take a look on that side. That's our space. And we are very grateful. So please put your hands together for Pastor Myrna, who will also give us a little bit of history with respect to this church and its relationship to the history of Chelsea. Okay, and the 1908 fire as well with respect to this church. Please put your hands together again for Pastor Myrna.
I'm excited. Welcome. Welcome to our building. Welcome to our church. As he said, my name is Pastor Myrna. I've been pastor here since 2018. Welcome all the panelists. I'm so glad to see everyone here. Let me tell you a little bit about this building that you're in. This building is about 90% original right now. So what you see is how it was built back in 1905. The original building was a wood structure, and it was put in this corner in 1857. And it was called Mount Bellingham Methodist Church at the time. So in 1905, there was a fire which destroyed the wooden structure, and then we had the masonry building built, the stone building. And it was dedicated in March of 1907, actually March 31st, 1907. And as many of you know the history of Chelsea, in 1908 was the Great Fire, and the church burned down again. And thank God that church people are resilient. We don't give up. We're persistent. And the church was rebuilt, and it was rededicated in 1910. So from 1910 till December 31st of last year, it was Mount Bellingham / Nueva Vida United Methodist Church. And as of January 1 of this year, we are now Nueva Vida en Jesus, which is New Life in Jesus. And we are now an independent church. So our congregants, 90% live in Chelsea. They go to Chelsea City Schools. They work in Chelsea. Many of them are immigrants, and Chelsea has always been a welcoming immigrant city. And I'm proud to say that we have some incredible kids in this congregation who receive scholarships, 4-year scholarships to Bryn Mawr and Suffolk University. So we have a new generation of incredible kids growing up in church, and we are now that we're independent, we're looking forward to doing community projects. So you'll be hearing from me, Pam, as pastor and an active member of this community. But welcome to our church. It could be your home. And of course, I'm working with Pastor Walters here, and we're very excited to have him. Thank you.
And that's Sister Beverly. Sister Beverly is almost the mother of the church. Her mother was the mother of the church. So she is informally and formally the mother of the church.
It was my mother too.
My
mother too.
Okay. I stand corrected. All right. So let's begin. Again, tonight, we want to talk about the issue of inclusivity, historically, race, and what Chelsea is. I want to emphasize that. Or what Chelsea was, what Chelsea is, what Chelsea will be, and what Chelsea ought to be. If those are concerns that we want to entertain tonight, we want to have a conversation. Okay, because fundamentally, we are all people of Chelsea. Is it Chelsean? What they have, Americans? Can we say Chelsea?
It's official. Chelsea is official title.
All right.
Tonight, you vote for Chelseans or Chelseans?
Chelsea. So tonight we want to begin our conversation, and I want to invite Sister Stacy, who will briefly talk about the history of the church in relation to Chelsea as well, with respect to the 1908 fire and where the church has been, what has happened, etc. So briefly, please put your hands together for Sister Chelsea.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stacy Smith, and I am a fifth-generation member of my family here in Chelsea, Massachusetts. I am also a member of the Chelsea Black community and a trustee of the People's AME Church in Chelsea. Tonight, I'm here speaking before you all to give you a brief bit of a summary on the People's AME. The original People's AME was founded in Delaware by 12 freed slaves, So this is a bit of the history from the website. The People's AME Church grew out of the Free African Society, which Richard Allen, Abelson Jones, and others established in Philadelphia in 1787, when officials at St. George's Methodist Episcopal Church pulled blacks off of their knees while they were praying. FAS members discovered just how far American Methodists will go to enforce racial discrimination against African Americans. Hence these members of St. George's made plans to transform their mutual aid society into an African congregation. Although most wanted to affiliate with the Protestant and Episcopal Church, Allen led a small group who resolved to remain Methodists. In 1794, Bethel AME was dedicated with Richard Allen as the pastor to establish Bethel's independence from interference from Methodists who were not of African descent. Allen, a former Delaware slave, successfully sued in the Pennsylvania courts in 1807 and in 1815 for the right of his congregation to exist as an independent institution. Because Black Methodists in other Middle Atlantic communities encountered racism and desired religious anatomy, Allen called them to meet in Philadelphia to form a new Wesleyan denomination, the AME Church. The African Methodist Episcopal Church has a unique and a glorious history. The AME Church rejected the negative theological interpretations which rendered all persons except people of European descent as a second-class citizen. Ours is a theological declaration that God is God all the time, for everybody, all people, all groups. The church was born in protest against slavery and the dehumanization of God's people. The AME Church here in the city of Chelsea, Mass. founded in about 1877 by a group of about 12 people banded together to pray and to study God's Word. Now, here's a brief history about our specific church here in Chelsea. The number of church members at the time of the 1908 fire is unknown to me. The Great Fire of 1908 destroyed the People's AME. It was a catastrophe where 492 acres burned down, destroyed the business section, municipal buildings, and over almost 3,000 other buildings. 13 churches perished, 23 oil tanks, the city hall, hospitals, banks, and so forth. The property damage was close to $20 million, including personal property and so forth. The mayor at the time was Mayor Beck, and he is quoted in my research to say that the city will rise from its ashes, built on better and broader lines. Mayor Beck also announced that the best form of assistance was money. Millions of dollars were poured into the city to assist with the rebuilding. Some things were left out, including the People's AME. By 1911, nearly the entire area was rebuilt. Its true origin of the fire will probably remain unknown. It is in the archives that the most plausible explanation is that the roof of a building caught on fire by a burning pile of rags. There are also mentions of, quote-unquote, a windy day. This particular comment was interesting to me because in the records, the other fire in 1973 was origin about 600 feet from the 1908 fire. This was eerily similar, and it drew my attention to do the research to try to discover how the destruction of these fires and how they have affected the Black community in the city. This was a post-Civil War time when Blacks were still fighting for the equality. Fires and destruction, including oppression, were very common in thriving Black neighborhoods. It is most likely that some of this, if not all, was intentional. What makes this worse is the fact that still to this day, in 2024, over a century later, the People's AME Church still has no stable home here in Chelsea, Mass. Rent has to be paid on a monthly basis. We are extremely grateful for our fellow church who allows us to come and worship and use the space here. We do not want to leave Chelsea, our home, or anywhere else to worship, like many others have had to do in Chelsea because they believe that Chelsea had no Black church. This was a rumor that was said to me throughout my research from several folks. Lastly, I would just like to add that we're here tonight with a purpose, and we ask that you all listen. We need a stable home, and by the grace of God, we will get there one step at a time. It shouldn't have to take hundreds of years to do so. Please help us in doing what is right for the People's AME Church in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Stacey. So fundamentally, we've got the issue of the fire and the loss of properties. We've got the extent to which whatever the city may have gotten, or the lack thereof, and the extent to which other institutions were built and other institutions weren't built, and the extent to which the walls of migration out of Chelsea, a lot of Black folks left because it didn't seem as though there was going to be the possibility to rebuild. Now, Pastor Werner, out of the goodness of her heart, there's a picture down there, if you look at it. That's the 1908, the picture of the 1908 fire. Quite devastating, you know. And she's kept that, and she's done a remarkable job of going into the history of it, which basically implies that people are interested in this church. I mean, in Chelsea and the fire. This church and People's AME Church are still here. They have neglected. Okay? So, and again, before I go to the panelists, I want to say we have been in collaboration, People's AME Church has been in collaboration with CBC. And we're very, very excited about what this collaboration and what CBC is doing in the community, which also implies that though black folks here do not have a church, but we have been very, very faithful to the community of Chelsea, doing everything to be viable, to be contributory to the existence and the viability of Chelsea. Can I have an amen? So, let's turn to our panelists now. And the first question is, I did send them these questions, so they must have done their own homework. So if you see them being very eroded, it's because they did the research. Okay, the first question, what are the impacts of the city of Chelsea responses to the two major fires of black people's presence in Chelsea? And you can open it a little bit, not only black people, but institutions that were burnt in Chelsea as well. Okay? So we'll start with, who want to go first? So, I'll
start. Let's see. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, test. So I actually want to thank you for the questions because I really had to think about the questions because they're not typical questions for me. I'll be very honest. So I had to really think about that and dig very deep. And I do believe that, as you said, after the fires, the church was never rebuilt. The church, People's AME Church didn't get funded or maybe didn't get funding to be rebuilt. And that has implications long term. And so you don't have to this day, you don't have a church home. And that is oftentimes how it is with people, and including Latinos. I'm Latina. We've been oftentimes left out of the conversation. And so that has generational impacts, right? And I always talk about this even in education. The work that we do today has generational impact. So I do believe that the fires and what happened as a result has had a generational impact on your ability to acquire a building. And so that's what I would say, and I hear you loud and clear. I also want to say that it is the Chelsea Black community. As a Latina superintendent, I have felt embraced by you and loved by you and supported by you. And I am so thankful for your presence in this community. And I'm grateful. I, as a superintendent, want to help rectify that by creating a diversity DEI office in our public schools, working with you and the community to bring out about the issues and have community conversations that are very important to an inclusive Chelsea.
Hi everyone, Judith Garcia, State Representative. Thank you for first of all facilitating this discussion because I think it's very important. And for me, I think it's taking 2 steps back and really recognizing what does a church mean to people. I think a church building, regardless of the denomination, regardless of what you believe in, I think a church is a temple, it's an anchor for many families. Families who experience difficulties, personal difficulties, either if it's a health scare, either if it's personal issues at home, right? We're looking for something to anchor us. We're looking for faith. We're looking for hope. And the last thing we want is to find a church that doesn't have stability, that's constantly being displaced, and that lives under so much uncertainty. So I think that what my colleague here, the superintendent, mentioned is so important. You know, not having a home that's stable is something that impacts us all, especially people who are seeking your services in terms of bringing hope and bringing anchor. So when I think about our commitment should be that. It should be making sure that a church such as People's AME Church has a stable home where people can go and where people can worship and be together in unity. I think you've done remarkable work by collaborating. Right now you have an incredible collaboration with the new church, which is Nueva Vida y Jesus, but how can we expand that? And you're doing a great job with CBC and really addressing intersectional issues. But how can we go beyond that? I think that's been the task.
City Manager?
I was going to pass it to John. You know, and my wife is in the crowd. I mean, we talk about places like Chelsea, right, that are environmental justice neighborhoods and cities and communities and places, and if you think about both fires, you know what drove both fires is institutional, systemic, dumping of society in these communities, right? In 1908, it was rags. In 1973, it was the scrapyards, right? And those places are not placed in wealthy communities. They're placed in communities that are historically marginalized. But we when I think of Chelsea, I think of resiliency. I think of I think of the last fire that occurred in this community was actually receivership, right? In 1992, it wasn't a physical fire; it was an administrative fire, and how the entire city, the schools, our infrastructure was decimated, and it has taken quite a toll on our community, on who we are, on our ability to educate our children. But I see it as I think that Chelsea is the biggest and best comeback story in the state, right? I mean, where we are today is unbelievable compared to where we were in 1992. And in all honesty, I left here 2 years ago, and I was talking to Joan about the CBC becoming a nonprofit, right? And in that short amount of time, the CBC is not only a nonprofit; you have a home, right? And you have a program, and you have a business model. And that's what I think that Chelsea is, right? Chelsea is, as the pastor was saying, we in Chelsea will persevere. We never back down. We'll always keep fighting.
Again, as the panel prior to me said, thank you for hosting this discussion. It's always important, and we hope that folks walk away a little smarter, a little more aware, a little more sensitive, and cognizant of all people in Chelsea. And I think that the two Chelsea fires and the impact on the Black community is tremendous, was tremendous, and is tremendous. And I think that, I know that traditionally, Black people rely on Black church. So wherever you go, many, many times, the relationship is very strong with Black people, and from slavery, the bed of Black people is the Black church. So not having that is monumental in a city. And I think that the Black church creates a sense of belonging, a sense of a home where folks could go to, and not only for religious purposes, but also for like health, as our representative said, and education and camaraderie and partnership and all of that as a family. And I think that non-presence here has been a factor of many Blacks leaving Chelsea, as our Black community not being as engaged as a community as it was in the past. So, you know, we came along and we've had a place to come to worship, but to have that church, that building, has been detrimental. To not have that has been detrimental for generations here in Chelsea. So I just think that the two fires, it was a major impact, and not getting the support or rebuilding the church has been devastating. But we are resilient people, and we come together and we support each other, and we found other ways and other means, and we celebrate, you know, Black folks here in the city as a part of the community. But I think that that partnership and that investment has to grow and has to really be intentional in terms of building up the Black community as feeling like a stakeholder. We are a stakeholder, but for each and every person to have that sense of belonging, and I really think it starts with the church, which is the bedrock of the Black community. Thanks.
Hi everybody, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm really honored to be here and to be alongside all of these amazing leaders. I too appreciated having these questions ahead of time. A lot of these are questions that I don't necessarily think of in the context of my work in terms of the fire, or the fires. But I do think what's interesting is, as Fidel said, there are significant events in Chelsea's history that have defined us as a people, as a community. The two fires, the receivership, Boston University taking over our schools, COVID, just so many things that continue to hit Chelsea hardest. We always say first and worst. That communities like Chelsea will be among the hardest hit because we're the lowest income, the most ethnically diverse, traditionally the most vulnerable communities. But what Stacey said really resonated to me. One of the things that she said about the mayor is something that really sort of touched me, because I think it's something that I always say, that we are like the phoenix that rises from the ashes. And I was really struck that the mayor, I hadn't heard that the mayor said will rise from the ashes. And we always say Chelsea community is resilient, and we are like the phoenix that will rise from the ashes. And I believe that in my heart, that no matter how terrible and devastating the events that face us, our community is stronger, we're better, we are one community. The one thing that I thought was really interesting in thinking about the fires was the first fire in 1908 was before redlining, but it almost perfectly set the stage to allow the pathway for redlining. As Fidel said, right, there's no mistake that all of these industrial activities are placed in the lowest income neighborhoods and the neighborhoods that are the most ethnically and racially diverse. And we see that today in 2024 along our Chelsea Creek waterfront, all of the industries near the produce. That's where folks are traditionally lowest income, most ethnically and racially diverse. And until we stop these systems of oppression, it will continue to happen. And so I think what's incredible is all of the work that we all are doing, and so many other folks, to try and reverse and to stop these systems of oppression, to break them down, to dismantle them, and to work against them so that this doesn't happen, this doesn't continue to happen. It's fire of 1908, fire of 1973, what's next, right? And so I think that's something that we always need to keep in our minds. There are systems inherent to beat us down, right? And unless we rise up, they will continue to beat us down.
So at some point, we're going to open it up to get comments and questions from the audience. But what we have also heard is that what did happen, or what has happened in Chelsea, these very significant experiences, 1908, 77, etc., experiences in Chelsea have defined the socio-political and economic landscape and perception of Chelsea to a large extent. One of the panelists talked about generational impact. Okay, so the question then is, how can we respond to the consequences of these? Okay, is it a question of creating conditions for individuals to rebuild their institutions? Is that a political question, or is that going to be a political decision? Okay, because those that have, to a large extent, been impacted, minority communities are still here to a large extent. Does City Hall think about it? Okay, and those that are stakeholders in the political system and economic system of Chelsea, are they thinking about it? I want to get a response from the Chief of Police, Keith. He will have to leave early because he's got some, family responsibility to take care of. So, Chief, what do you think? What are you thinking about when we in light of the question and the conversation we've had?
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I cannot join the distinguished panel. Same as panel answering the questions about the fire. I lived through the second one, living in Chelsea. My great-grandfather fought the first one, and my father fought the second one as Chelsea firefighter. So I always thought it in that realm. But what everybody said resonated with me about places like Chelsea were the dumping grounds. They were the poor, proud, hard-working people, and this is where they placed places where pollution, generational, as the city manager said, I remember walking down Everett Ave, all it was junkyards. Junkyards, rag shops, people living amongst that. Roseanne, with green roofs, like every day we see the level of people who have harmful side effects. There's no question this city and people like my family, high cancer rates that everybody's experienced there. And I always look at it, early in my career in fact, like the police department, we're the consequence people. Like we're out of politics. You were bad or you were good, and that doesn't work. We all know that. We have shifted, as the city has shifted, to a public health approach to policing, which I think is the new way to go. And it has to be that way to take into what everybody said on the panel. I have a tremendous leader who has done yeoman's work in that. Well, before it was a thing that everybody copies with Molly, with Roca. I just think there's a long way to go. I love the city. Chelsea's unique. I think maybe Joan and Roseanne, maybe we've lived here most of our lives, and the one thing I could say growing up here, I always was colorblind. My neighborhood was the most multicultural street, and we were just neighbors, and we looked out for each other. We've lost a lot of that. Being a police officer for years, we need to get community back. When they were talking about faith in the church, you're homeless without a home. So you have a voice, which, the Chelsea Black community, Reverend, you're bringing back, and that's where it starts. I grew up Catholic. We had a strong Catholic church. My church is very weak right now, very low attended masses. I think faith is one of the big missing ingredients in bringing neighborhoods back, bringing families back. And what you did, Reverend, I told Reverend that he's one of the best orators I've ever heard. He's tremendous. It's always a lesson in history when I listen to you. And so I self-reflected in what Stacy said. I grew up here my whole life, but I never thought those questions would impact me. But they answered everything so eloquently. And you think of fire, you don't think of churches burning down and communities being displaced. And now we're talking over 140 years later, and we still haven't gotten back to where you want to get back to. So I would just say on the policing side, I think we know that now. We've shifted gears. It's public health, and we're ground zero on public health, and we need to be the core group that provides support, with the clergy. I think that's a missing link in what we're dealing with now. But I don't want to ramble on, but it's, the questions were, I was hoping I didn't have to answer them because I don't know. But you guys did a great job. But that's what I'm learning from this. That you don't realize if you lose your house of faith and you lose and no one builds it back and no one helps you try to build it back. And now like groups like the CBC are trying to, you know, bring it back. And if it's not for groups like that, you're never gonna get that, I guess. So thank you.
So before we get to the next question, on Sunday, Easter Sunday, we had a lot of young people that came to church. It was quite a marvelous sight to see all these young people coming into the church. But they were born in the church, okay, and they've given birth and they've got children. But the question I kept asking myself was, so where will their children eventually get married? Where will their children eventually baptize their own children? We don't have a place for them. But that's what a church is supposed to be, right? You have structures that have been there for decades and centuries. But we don't have that. So part of this conversation and even this weekend celebration of the anniversary is to highlight that. However, it's also to raise the question with respect to inclusivity in the city of Chelsea. Okay? Again, a couple of questions that I sent to the panelists. And if you see them talking like scholars and professors, it's because they have these questions. So how did the city of Chelsea become a sanctuary city? And has the city of Chelsea reevaluated that notion of being a sanctuary city since it became one? Is there a need for evaluation? Okay? And the city of Chelsea being a sanctuary city, has that also led to the marginalization of some people, or some people being kept out? Now, on a very objective level, I pose these questions so that we can think about Chelsea as a sanctuary city. So, they have these questions that will begin with Razan, since we began with the superintendent on this side, if you don't mind. The next one will begin in the middle.
To the question about sanctuary city, we passed the first sanctuary city ordinance, and let's back up, thank you again to the questions. In 2007, I was the city council president at the time, and what I thought was really interesting is that Rep. Garcia was the vice president of the city council in 2020 when it was reconfirmed. And so very exciting to share this panel with you. And the original origins of the Sanctuary City Resolution were similar times to now. I feel like now is more polar, but originally when we first passed this resolution, again, it was through community organizing. It was the work of La Colaborativa, when we were working there with the Chelsea Latino Immigrant Committee, and folks feeling unwelcome and unsafe. There were a lot of immigration raids that were happening throughout really the whole country, but there was one in particular that happened in another part of Massachusetts at a factory bakery, and a lot of folks immigration went in and they started the deportation hearings, and kids were left at schools and at child care providers, and they were left unattended, and it just wreaked chaos throughout the immigrant community because there were really so many folks who could assimilate and say, oh my God, if that happened here in Chelsea, my kid would be left in daycare, my child would be left in school without somebody to pick them up. Oh my gosh, that could happen to us. And it was the Sunny Bianco, I think, factory, and that was devastating, and that rippled throughout all of Massachusetts. And as an immigrant-based community in Chelsea, we knew that we needed to do something to stand up against immigration, to say everybody is welcome here, and we cannot let immigration come in just to scare people or to start deportation proceedings for people who are innocent, who are working hard every single day. And I think that's what's really interesting about this this political situation that we find ourselves in now. There's so much negativity around immigrants, and yet when we look at it, immigrants are here just like my grandparents and my dad's an immigrant. You come here to work for a better way of life, to try and raise money to keep your family safe. You're not coming here because this is the most sunny, wonderful, beautiful place on earth and you want to leave your home. Like, that is not true. And so we need to recognize the value of immigrants throughout all of the generations and to stop the hate on immigrants. And that was really what the Sanctuary City Resolution was intended to do. And it was intended to talk to and to work with the police department to say, if immigration calls you chief and just says, we want to come in and do this raid, what are you going to say? And it was, previous chiefs, but I think it's run through to today's chief, that unless there is a real reason, unless there is something violent, troubling, just because people are here undocumented, that's not a crime, right? And it was intended for the police department to say, thanks, but no thanks, go somewhere else. You're not welcome here in Chelsea. And, I'd love for Marcia to pick up there.
Thank you, Rosie. It's such an honor because I always attribute those who came before me, and I think you were a remarkable leader. It takes a lot of courage to lead and to pass legislation that is so bold yet so intentional, because I came after, and I am proud to say that as a council we recertified that commitment. And at the bottom of it is you're dehumanizing humans. That's what it was. And in 2020, when we decided to reevaluate and recertify our commitment, it happened because children were being put in cages. Immigrants were being called rapists, criminals, aliens, illegals. And I think, and I would hope that would sit not well with anyone, especially, a church, right? People who believe in God, who believe in Jesus. Jesus would not think twice to help an immigrant. And I want to speak about what this means because now I'm at a different level. I'm a state legislature now. And the things I hear about the immigrants from Haiti, the way we express ourselves about those people, what is that? If the immigrants did not look, right, if they were not from Haiti, we would not say the things that we're saying. That's right. The things I've heard, things from my colleagues that I've heard. And so what I want to say is sanctuary cities, would I be committed to reevaluate and eliminate it? I would never eliminate it. Because I think that our commitment and I'm proud, right? Massachusetts has stepped up and has stepped up big time. The federal government has not passed immigration reform. They didn't pass it in 2007 when you were asking for it. We're in 2024 and there's no immigration reform and they're not putting up any money. So the state is taking that responsibility. And you know what Latinos and Black legislators are doing right now? We're uniting. We have the Black and Latino, the Massachusetts Black and Latino Caucus. We don't operate in silos. We don't coexist. We work together to say, this is hard, it is a dilemma, it is difficult, but we're going to step up and we're going to welcome everyone. That's right. Regardless if they're from Colombia, we need to all work together and do this. And when we look at Chelsea, we're small, but we're mighty. And when the governor called on Saturday and said this is coming, I think we were ready. I think we knew it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. And when we took that call, we stepped up. I remember calling the city manager, talking to colleagues, and we knew we had a huge responsibility, and the huge responsibility was to stay on message, stay on narrative, and work together. Because when the governor calls you to step up for something, we know that one day we will need the governor. And it's not like it was optional. It's not like we could get on the phone and say, no, governor, we're not going to do this for you. It's how do we respond to it? So when we talk about resilience, we're resilient and we respond to it. And now we have a Latina service provider helping families, children, moms. That's what we have. You know the crazy things I was hearing? We're going to have rapists in our backyards. Why? What does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean? So I think, if I'm proud of what we did because I don't agree with dehumanizing anyone. I am concerned what is to come with the November election, what that will mean for our communities. When we had the 2020 decision to obviously recertify our commitment with sanctuary cities, the president at the time, President Donald Trump, was saying, if you continue with the sanctuary city status, we will cut funding. And that's what we were facing. So it's a scary time. I don't like to think in the lens of if we help immigrants, how does this alienate someone else? I think that our biggest commitment should be, how can we make sure that if this benefits someone, we can uplift others as well, and how can we work together? I don't like to think in silos. I think, as I've said before, if Jesus were here, he wouldn't be picking and choosing.
I get it. Golly, that's a challenge. Thanks, Pastor.
And I agree with Rosie and Judith here in regard to Chelsea becoming a sanctuary city in 2007 and then reenacted again in 2020. And I think that it's important to know that it's just not about, protecting from enforcing immigration. But as I said at the City Council last meeting, it also is about enacting measures that are welcoming and favoring to all migrants. And it also undertakes the responsibility of receiving and processing influx of migrants, right? And whether that's black, white, Asian, whatever they look like, all migrants. So I just had that burning desire to show up last week. And even though when I went to the council, it felt like yesterday's news, it wasn't, right? And I was there to remind them that it's current, it's present, it's ongoing, and silence is acceptance. So we have to, when things are going on, it can't be yesterday's news. It has to continue. We have to continue that conversation, and we have to, because if we don't, it's backyard conversation, right? It's dark room conversation, and that we don't need, because that's the worst enemy, ones that are speaking in the dark. So I think that sanctuary cities, it's absolutely in order in Chelsea, because when you have a population of over 47% that is foreign-born in a city, that speaks volumes. When you think about the Irish coming here, and the Italian coming here, and Jewish coming here, and just folks from different places in the world coming here, that's what our nation is about, that's what our state is about, and that's what our city stepped up to be about. And I think that thinking about other individuals, such as blacks, because that's what we're here to talk about as well, and black votes being 8%. Some studies say 6.2%, other studies say 8% here in the city of Chelsea, and whites 33%, and Latinos 67%. Not good at math, don't know if that adds up to 100, but the numbers sound right to me. It doesn't, right? Yeah, city manager said it's good. So I do want to just, think about what that means in a predominantly brown community, right? And I've said that thinking about advocating for all people to be, brought in together and not working in a silo, but as our representative said, if you are supporting one, you're making sure, you're uplifting the community as a whole. But just to keep that in mind, because often racism and bigotry and discrimination is often overlooked in a community that all looks the same, right? Because there is so many pocket neighborhoods and cultural differences that need to continue to be uplifted. So while we celebrate being a sanctuary city, we always have to keep in mind that nobody is left behind, right? And I think that that's a thought, that's a conversation, that's what birthed CBC, because folks feel left behind, and not intentionally, but just the way it is, right? So just being cognizant of that and continue, I'm going to say intentional a lot tonight, but just to be intentional, not only to celebrate all of us as equal, all of us, we are our sisters and our brothers keepers, but also to remember others. And not thinking about marginalized, because Pastor, used that word and it stuck in my head, right? And what does that mean? And I think, if I think it through, I'll probably find a better word to sound more integrative, but I think that we have to be mindful of everybody. And I think not only thinking about blacks in a brown community, but thinking about whites in a brown community and what that means. Rosie, myself, the chief, Judith, born and raised here, all of us, we all have that in common, right? But we all come from, culturally, ethnically, we come from different places. But when we get here, we're in it together. So as Martin Luther King said, we may not have all come in the same ship, but we're in the same boat right here. So that's what's significant.
Thank you. And I'm glad that State Rep Garcia brought it to what's going on today, right? We did get the call from the governor, and I not only I welcome the call. I'm honored for the call, and I'm very excited to be a part of this process. However, since that call, I've had to personally answer and advocate for this, and I always like to get personal. I came to this country as a 7-year-old boy on a tourist visa in Miami, and remained in the country with 3 kids and my mother. Right? We stayed in, and my mother wasn't coming for a handout or anything. She immediately got 3 jobs as a janitor. We barely saw her, but her main goal was to make a better life for us. And she's 65 years old. She was at my swearing in, and I said, I am here not because of my sacrifices. I am here not because I'm smart or because I'm handsome. I am here because of my mother getting on that plane, right? And everything that she had done to get me here. So as an adult, as a father, as a husband, I have a moral obligation to not forget where I came from, and to continue fighting for those that are coming behind me. Right? I will not forget where I came from. I will not forget what was given to me. It is a gift that I will be using to help more people in the future.
I'm thinking about this from an educator's perspective, from where I sit as a superintendent. And this is before me, but the mission statement of Chelsea Public Schools is we welcome and educate all. And when I got that phone call from learning about the families that were coming, my response was, we welcome and educate all, and we mean that. And so, no matter where you come from, and my response was, we will take care of the children that come to us. We will love them. We will make them feel welcome. We will welcome their families with open arms, and they will feel belonged in Chelsea Public Schools. And I stand by that because I always go back to, much like our city manager and everyone sitting here, I go back to who I am. And I always say, why? Why do I do this work? I come from a line of educators. On my mother's side, I am probably a third generation educator. My grandparents were educators. Both my grandparents, they were Hidons, and they were some of the very first Latino educators in the Denver, Colorado area and Commerce City. And they believed in the power of education because it could free generations. And so that's the legacy that my grandfather gave to me and my grandmother. And then my mother was a bilingual educator. And so I would visit my mom's classroom when I was a little girl, and I loved setting up her classroom every start of the year, and she would bring me. And I had no idea I was going to be a teacher. And I actually ran away from the calling. I was like, peace out. I'm not going to do this. And I majored in journalism because I wanted to work in public relations. And somehow, some way, I always say God got a hold of me and said, no, we've got something else for you. And so, again, there's a long history of educators, but on my father's side, my father came to this country when he was 12 from Mexico. He remembers crossing the border on foot to this country at 12, and he talks about his journey. And then my grandfather was a custodian in schools, and so I'm not far removed. I carry that story as a reason to why we are here as educators, why we educate all, because everybody has a story. Everybody, and in Chelsea we say we know our students by name, by strength, and by story, because everybody has a gift. Every child has a gift, and I believe that with my whole heart. And every child has a strength, and we look at everything from an asset based, because our children are brilliant. Their being bilingual is a blessing, and so that's the framework. And it's amazing when I talk to people, they're like, thank you so much for being so friendly about this, because they're shocked. And I'm like, no, let's see, we'll figure out how we can work this out, blah, blah, blah. And then I was just on a phone call today, or Zoom, with the Annenberg Institute, because they've identified Chelsea High School as one of 14 high schools that's received many immigrant children. And the research is showing that there's, of course, 14 schools in Chelsea High School, but now they're researching how are we meeting the needs of our newcomers. And I met with them today, and they're like, you have so many resources in your community. I talked about La Collaborativa, I talked about Greenwoods, I talked about Roca, and all of how we come together and we meet the needs of our families. We did this during the pandemic, and we do this again. And they said that's very unique, and how you wrap around as an entire community. And that's our strength. I loved seeing our community come together for whatever cause it is. It's family. Like being here tonight, this is family. And I haven't been here that long. here, but it's family, you know, and so I, you know, family means everybody, like we don't leave anybody behind.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oops, am I on? Am I on now? Good. Well, let's give them a round of applause. So we're opening it up for a couple of questions from you all. And fundamentally, the issues at stake here are access to resources, okay, for all. A level of an understanding of equity that is across the board, to the extent to which everyone can feel that they have the opportunity to participate in the formulation of public policies as well. Because policies affect every community. And those who sit at the table to formulate policies also bring their own consciousness to those policies as well. So are we willing, part of the question with respect to inclusivity, with respect to allowing everyone at the table, are we willing to open the table for others to sit at the table and participate in policy formulation in Chelsea? As we talk about equity, justice, accommodation for all. Those are the fundamental concerns for all groups in Chelsea, whether it's the 8% blacks or the 65% Hispanics or the 30-something% white. Are we at the table, all of us at the table, going back and forth so as to formulate policies that will define what Chelsea ought to be tomorrow? I want to open it up for a couple of questions. If you have a question, Odilon, who is our church pianist, please put your hands together for him. Pastor Werner has been very, very grateful to allow him to play for us every Sunday. But he's got the mic at the back. So if you have a question, please put your hands up and he will come over to you.
Hello. Do you anybody hear me? Okay, my name is Cece, everybody. Some of you all know me, some of you don't. I'm just a black loud girl, I can tell. Anyway, I love Chelsea. I've been here a long time, 30, 40, close to 30 some years. Anyway, the panel is nice. The question I want to ask is that what we are talking about tonight, what are we going to do about it? Is we just talking about it, or are we going to make it work? But we have the resources and the people to make everything work, but we got to get down to business, not just talk about it. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone wants to take that question?
I'll take a stab at it. You know, I think of what the CDC has done, right, over the last 2 years, and it is incredible. I remember when the vaccination clinic was happening, right, and it was, you know, we didn't have the capacity as a city, right, to operate that clinic, and I think that everybody else was just tapped out, right? I mean, a lot of us were doing food or you know, or shelter or all kinds of things, and you know, the question was who can help, right? And two ladies, or more than two ladies, but at least two ladies stepped up, right, and raised their hands and said. We need more people raising their hand and saying, "Let's do this." Absolutely. And that basically was, you know, I think about the role of government a lot, right? And I think a lot about those conversations that we were having in March of 2020, right? Of what is the role of government? Is the role of government to feed people that are hungry? Is the role of government to shelter people that don't have a home, right? And I think that's the conversation that we're having as a society, right? Is the role of government to stand up nonprofits? You know, is the role of government to provide a home for a church, right? I mean, it's all of these conversations that we need to have as a society. There is no right or wrong answer. It is a conversation that we need to have. And I will tell you that Chelsea is strong, the city is strong, the city administration is strong because of our nonprofit partners, right? I couldn't do the work that I do without ROCA, right? I mean, I couldn't do the work that I do without Green Roots. So we need to have everyone at the table, and you're right, it is not about talk. It is about, when work needs to get done, who's going to do the work?
Yes.
I just wanted to add to what Fidel is saying, that the city is stronger with us, right? The city is stronger with the CBOs and the nonprofit organizations, and it was brilliant to reach out to each of us and say, what can you bring to the table? We need you. And that really started a ripple effect of partnership and collaboration, because we really do, most of us like each other, right? So most of us. And it's great because it allows different organizations to bring the folks that they represent and advocate for to the table. And I think that table just keeps getting bigger and bigger because we all show up with an intention to bring someone else, right? So I often look around the table to say, what community isn't represented here? And then try to reach that community to include them. Our city manager is just a phone call away. Rosie and I, she'll call and say, can you get on a call? I'm there. Roca is the leaders they're just the big brothers and sisters of our community, and we do so much, and we do not take it for granted, right? Because it's important to show that camaraderie and that collaboration, so folks that we represent understand that we're working together, that we're getting through this together. And I think that it was just brilliant for the city manager at the time was Tom, to make those calls and say, we need your help, right? Because there's pocket neighborhoods out there, there's folks out there that we can't reach, and we think that you can, and you can, and you can. So all of us coming together, it works. It is more, we're just not talking the talk, we're walking the walk. And I think that that's what's most important. And there's always a chair at the table for another person to sit there. And we said it during COVID, because we, celebrated Black History Month on Zoom. And it was amazing. And we just uplifted every organization and what they're doing, and reached out, and folks were sending pictures and telling stories. And it was amazing come together. And I think that and we said that year that we hope there's a seat at the table, and there was. So that speaks volumes, and that's for anyone who wants to get involved. Chelsea's small, so when you speak, you're heard, and that's what's most important, and that's what brings value to conversations and at the table.
Thank you. This is a wonderful opportunity. I'm so thankful to have the panel here. And my sister Jill, I'm extremely proud of my little sister Jill for all the work that she's doing and all the information that she's bringing to the Black community here in Chelsea. I mean, we haven't had a voice in the Black community for some time. So congratulations, Jill. That's amazing. We all get it, honestly. My mother served on the board of cabinet 20 years before I did, so we all get it, honestly. We grew up with knowing that the community is an extended part of your family. And you take care of your family, and you take care of your community as well. So it's that's a given for all of us. As far as the work that we're doing in the collaborations in Chelsea, it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, we have an amazing collaboration of organizations that get together, and if one organization cannot provide a certain resource or service, we know that we can send our clients to the other organization so they can get what they need. So we have an entire collaboration that's going to take care of the needs of the folks in Chelsea. And as far as the newly arrived migrants, I don't understand why everybody's up in arms. They've been here for some time. We've been serving migrant families in the hotels way before Christmas when they first had come. And I think it's probably just a larger number of them, but we have been servicing, providing resources, basic necessities to these migrant families, and they're no different from anybody else that we serve at Capital. And I will tell you right now, I'll say it here, and I've said it before, poverty has no color. We are addressing a need. It's not the person that we're addressing. We're addressing your needs. The only, and Capital is always, anybody who comes to Capital with any kind of request or need for resources, I make sure that we are going to make a difference in somebody's life every single day. Fuel assistance, clothing, anything that we can help with in basic necessities, I make sure that Capital is doing that as well. And then I just wanted to say just one small thing about, the migrant families. Should government, that's a good question that you brought up, Fidel. How much should government be involved with housing people? How much should government be involved with feeding people? You know what I'm saying? Because I do believe that if there was no limit to what the government can do, then we wouldn't have this issue. Okay? So I think that there's a limit to the amount of funding that the government is going to put into this. So we need to have a lot more advocates to get people on our side. And I know that we're in a really, really strange place in politics because everything is so polarized. And the work that we do is not even noble anymore. So we need to have a lot more advocates like Judith Garcia, you know what I mean, that's going to forward our mission and get the support that we need on the ground. And I am truly, truly thankful to be a part of a community that takes care of everybody, regardless of where you're coming from. And just one more thing on the thing. We just want to watch with the government the systemic segregation of migrants. Okay? Putting migrants in already black and brown communities where they're completely accepted because they know they're accepted there. But they're limited. So why don't we spread them out and give them access, put them in more communities, get them access to different types of resources so that we're not doing the systemic segregation that puts, migrants in already black and brown communities. You know what I'm saying? Spread it out. Let them have resources and access to other communities. Well, Newton, you know what I'm saying? So they know that we are going to take care of these folks, but let's give these folks opportunities to spread their wings and go into different communities. That's the only thing that I have about, the systemic segregation of putting migrant families in already black and brown communities. There's a lot more communities that have a lot more to offer, and it should be spread out. And they know that that's what we do here. That's what we do here. We welcome people with open arms, and we take care of people regardless of their color. Because poverty, again, poverty has no color.
Thank you so much. Before you answer the question, let me just put this in one. I want to apologize. We didn't make provision for those whom English is not can understand. So Pastor Marina brought that to my attention. So I want to apologize. And those who understand, please explain it to those who may have a problem with it. So please, that's one thing. Also, the second thing is, let me let you all know that Joan is a sister of Rochelle. Do you know that? Now, so you have these two women. You have these two women in Chelsea. Doing phenomenal work in Chelsea. we have these two women, so I want to recognize Rachel. She's a part of our church anyway. And these two women are part of our church. Okay, they're people's enemies. That means people's AME church has been helping Chelsea as a city. So can the city of Chelsea pay for what we have been getting for you? Because you've been getting it free, so. Anyway, but I just want to recognize Michelle, and she's doing a phenomenal job. And please put your hands together for her. Doing a phenomenal job, and want to recognize that. And that whole point of systemic segregation ought to be spread. I mean, people need to be spread. Now, I was at, and don't take this, I was at a pastor's gathering, and I had to submit a report for my church. And because other pastors were talking about people that were coming in and calling them quote-unquote migrant. I had a struggle with the word, okay? Because migrant is impersonal. If you say Latinos or Hispanics or Haitian, that's personal. I don't want to label. The American racial consciousness comes out of labeling people. When you label people, you stereotype them, you stigmatize them. Labeling is not good. The kind of labeling on a socio-political level we see in the United States, in Europe, in the West. You go to England, you see the same thing. Okay? So I struggle with the use of the word migrant. Okay? I prefer to call them Haitians or Latinos or any other, where they come from. Okay? If it was the Polish, you call them the Polish. You call them the Irish. Isn't it? There was a time in the United States when the Irish were not white, the Polish were not white, the Jews were not white. Okay? Today we know the Irish, the Jews, the Polish, they are white. The only group of people who were white were the Puritans from England, a small group of people. Small group of people. They said they were white. But we know that whiteness is a social construction. Blackness is a social construction. And so in the West, which includes the United States, Europe, you have this labeling that goes on and that affects mobility, socio-political, economic mobility. Okay, so let's go back to Michelle's question, to the panelists, and thank you, Michelle, for making that point. Thank you. Yes, go ahead. No one wants to respond. You got the question? Can we spread, when we talk about, and then housing, can we spread this notion of putting the Haitians or a group of people we call quote-unquote migrant in one community rather than spreading and then making, creating access to housing, etc. Right?
So I think I'll jump in here and say, first I'll provide a little bit of context of what's going on at the state level. So Massachusetts passed a law in 1986 called the Right to Shelter Law. And it is basically a law that says that if a person is in need of shelter, family, children, individual, regardless if they just came to our country or are one paycheck away and they've lost their home, if they need shelter, the state steps up and places them in a hotel or some sort of shelter. So that's number one. We've seen during the Charlie Baker administration, it was his administration that raised the alarm and said this is going to be an issue because we have an influx of individuals who need homes and do not have shelter. And those numbers were rising. It was the perfect storm. No immigration reform was passed at the federal level. We have a pandemic. We had civil unrest in many countries. We have Ukraine, we have so many countries that are going through civil unrest. And then we have a country, Haiti, their president was killed. They have no government, and they have gangs taking over. So they had no option, right? And you're forced out of your country. And as you're forced out of your country, you have to choose every day you step out of your house. Am I going to be a victim of rape? How am I going to get the money to be able to afford a passport, a flight? So there's so many decisions along the way. We have an influx of children, families coming to Boston. Many of them, as we speak, are at Terminal E at Logan Airport. So it is our duty, right, as government, and I think your question is great, right? If we don't give shelter to children and families and individuals who are coming, they will most likely end up in our streets. So if they end up in our streets, the question will be, well, what is the government doing about it? What are you doing to respond to it? So Massachusetts is keeping up with the centuries-long commitment of welcoming migrants. Even, we've had different waves all the time, the Polish, Irish. And now I think what's really forcing the conversation, and this is to give more context, I became state representative, we're in 2024, in 2023 of last year. And as of now, as of July 1st, we've been funding this, right? And we have different branches. We have the House, the Senate, governor. Governor makes requests. Governor's first plan of action was capping the amount of people that we can take to the shelter. So she capped that at 7,500. So we were okay with that. It's a difficult choice to make, right? We cap it. How do you come up with this number? Then she needed more funding. Her administration needed more funding to keep up. And then it was us, the House, where we said we can give more funding, but there has to be a limit on how long the stay can be. So we placed a cap of 9 months for the stay. And fast forward to what does this mean for us? What it means is that by July 1st, we would have, as a state, invested $1 billion to just shelter, which is big. And let me put that in context. The Student Opportunity Act, it took 12 years to fully fund, and you would know this, 12 years to fully fund the Student Opportunity Act. In 1 year, we will have invested $1 billion. So I challenge you, it's very difficult to we think about this all the time because we're living it every day and we need to respond to it every day because the federal government is not coming. They're not giving us funds. The federal delegation voted against passing immigration reform just in November, which was very disappointing. I was actually with the governor. I was in an office, the Massachusetts Black and Latino Caucus. We were all in an office, and I'm so glad, Michelle, that you brought up how are we spreading out the overflow shelters? Because that's a question that we are going to ask the governor. How are we doing this? And part of me understands the answer. The technical answer is there are only few buildings that the governor has jurisdiction over. They have to be state buildings. And if she has a state building, it's very easy for her to say, okay, we're going to place them at this courthouse, we're going to create this shelter, like it happened here in Chelsea, the Soldiers' Home, because she has jurisdiction over that because they're state buildings. And that's why there was some quick response with that. However, going back to the money portion of it, how does that impact our cities? It means that when I have to go and ask for funds for the city of Chelsea, my asks have to be modest because the state is spending a lot of money. We're not spending, and just to clarify, we're not spending taxpayer dollars. We're actually spending ARPA funds for this, but we're also spending, there was an escrow account that was specifically created, so it's interest money. It hasn't touched any of the state's reserves. as of the moment. But that's the larger context. That's where it's a dilemma for us, because we're trying to be compassionate leaders. We're trying to step up with lots of courage to respond during a time of need. But we also know that we need to deliver to communities and to organizations that do so much, you know. So that's the biggest challenge that we're facing, and we're trying the best we can to do with it. But I think I also want to take 3 steps back to recognize Massachusetts overall. We're the 3rd most expensive state in the U.S. It's unaffordable to live here. You know, the reality is, if you want to buy a home, the average home in Massachusetts is $900,000, and a person would have to make $300,000 salary to be able to buy a home, and that's impossible. So my plug here, and when we talk about activating and organizing, in May, just a few weeks from now, Massachusetts, we're taking the housing bond bill. It's a bill, the Affordable Homes Act, and this bill is offering to have $4 billion investing in creating, preserving, and growing the pipeline of affordable housing and just housing overall to address the housing crisis. And we're having a housing crisis at every level. You know, the people who want to buy a home, it's hard to buy a home because of the numbers I just gave you. It's difficult to rent because your paychecks are not keeping up. So I think that when it comes to addressing our losses, we need to make sure that when I'm at that table, I'm listening to you and I'm centering your interests and making sure that we're really growing our housing, our health equity, which is also important. So a lot of varying subjects, but I don't want to take the whole space.
Yeah, and that's very important. Thank you very much. And again, go back to Rachel's question for you panelists. Part of the question is how to prevent the perpetuation of systemic segregation. Okay, and I like that phrase, systemic segregation. Okay, that is also historic. Furthermore, how to spread, okay, the need to spread the accommodation of those who are coming, okay, in the various communities rather than hand-picked community. Okay, that's the question.
I get that. Well, you say that there's, since the governor has these state properties. So the state properties that you're saying, this happens that falls in Chelsea. Just happens that like falls in Roxbury. I mean, where they're at. Come on, I work in Worcester, so I mean, in my school, they can stay in my school where I work. I work in a government-funded program, ACDS, like Michelle's Capitol sister, and we allow the parents. Well, I will, but I mean the director, that they can stay in the school all day long while their child is attending the program because they have nowhere to go. So you're telling me Wellesley and Newton and Natick and, you know, I can go on and on with these communities, these richer communities that have old money, don't have a state facility somewhere they can put them?
Yeah.
That's my question. I'm confused.
Yeah.
You know, I think that question is not a question that we can answer in this table, right? I mean, I certainly have no jurisdiction on Reading anymore, right? But I know that Reading would be happy if this conversation was happening then. What I will say, my mother moved to Miami in 1990. My mother has never left Miami. My mother is a citizen of the United States that doesn't speak English, right? My mother, you know, has lived in probably the same neighborhood since she got here in 1990. You know, it was. I don't know that it was a choice. She arrived there because she was welcome there, because it was her community, because it was her family, it was her language, it was her food, it was, you know, her support system. And I've been trying to get my mom to move to Chelsea for about 5 years, and she's never leaving. Right? She's got her support system there, and you know, when we had this meeting, when we had a meeting with the State House, I'm sorry, with the governor's office at City Hall, one of the folks from the governor's office, I think, said something that just really touched my heart, right? And he said, that his family from India came to Massachusetts not because of the weather, as Rosie was alluding to, but because it was a place where they had community, because it was a place where they could integrate into. Now, future generations hopefully will be able to grow from that, right? And that's, I think, is something that we all have to do, particularly our superintendent with schools. But I think that the choices that we have, are to support the folks that do come here, and they do come here because we are supportive, right? I mean, so it is a hard question.
And I'd like to add that when they come to the brown communities or communities of color, if you think about Woburn, where they went to, and cars riding by with crosses and burning crosses, and they've been, prejudice is happening in those communities. So the richness is there, but so is the bigotry and hate. So
Busing, I'm sorry, when you talk about busing and what we had to do to integrate the community so that people could have access to better things, it was done. And there was a lot of racism, there was a lot of bigotry and hatred towards those people, but you can't not do it. You know what I'm saying?
I agree, and I think that these individuals coming, these Haitians coming, are already traumatized, right? So you think about re-traumatizing them and putting them in those situations that they're going to be re-traumatized again and again, that it would make sense to put them in a community that might be more compassionate and might know, we've been there, we've experienced this, and have a little more compassionate. So here it was at a council meeting that there was a conversation, but in those cities, they're in the streets, they're like waiting and lurking, and they're in the grocery stores. So just to re-traumatize the Haitians that have come here, I think it's wise not to put them in certain neighborhoods, because the money is not going to get to them, and all the resources are really not going to be provided for them in a healthy way in those neighborhoods. And I do think that it's a transition, right? So, if they're here for 3 weeks to 6 weeks and they find housing, that random certificate in Mansfield, or down the Cape, or Nantucket, or another city that, a housing slot will open for a Haitian family, then they're able to go, but not as a group, but as an individual family that's, gonna get a chance to make it in a thriving neighborhood. But as a group, I think it's more, it's not safe for 100 migrant families to come into Wellesley and be targeted in that house, that building.
Okay. So Rosa Parks sat on a crowded bus full of white people. Okay.
Yeah.
Did what she had to do to further her mission for equality. You know what I'm saying? So I just don't, I'm not going to go back and forth.
Yeah, I think Rosa Parks was selected to sit on that bus.
Boston did not want black students.
I'll have to joke. Now you see the level of interaction between these sisters.
The sisters, here we go.
Okay? That's what
Take the mic.
is benefiting from. Because they sit and go back and forth and then they come and do something. You understand? But we got to bring it to an end at some point. But it's very important. It's very important. In light of all of this, what we're talking about again is access to resources, inclusivity, equity, justice, okay, a level of accommodation for all people. Okay, and so when we come back to Chelsea, the question then is, what do we put in place? What are the conditions? And when they were going, I just wanted to say, city manager and state rep, here you see policy formulation. You need to tap on these two people, and get real good. I hope someone was taking notes. Yeah, because they were talking policy. That's policy formulation right there. And then, so how can we establish conditions for all people? Now, before we bring it to an end and recap, I want to ask the superintendent of schools here at Chelsea School, what are some of what models or approaches have you adopted to respond to this issue in a very conscious and intentional way in light of the conversation that's going on?
You know, and someone said it already, this is what we do every day. Like, we do this every day. We already have new arrivals in our schools. We do this every day, and as a matter of fact, the staff that we have at the Parent Information Center, the staff, we have a homeless liaison. Our staff are being asked to help other communities and educate other communities on how to welcome new arrivals. We are educating this other districts on how to do this well. So this is something we do every day. We are experts in this. We know what we've been doing for years. And so this is like, we've got this. Like, I just had a meeting, where's it, DLT Wednesday with our school leaders. I held them, I was like, school leaders, I need to talk to you. We talked, and they're just so great. They're like, we've got this, Miss, we've got this. We do this every day. So they're ready, and we're ready. And so it's something that we are very well equipped to do. The intake, we also do mental health assessments of all of the students coming in. We are concerned about trauma, so we screen, and we have processes in place to screen. And one thing that we've done, and this was several years ago, right during the pandemic, I remember sitting in our office, and we were very few at City Hall during the pandemic, and I was like, Erin, Dr. Jennings is here. I was like, Erin, we need to do something, because the kids coming back after the pandemic, I'm concerned about the mental health. And so, we need a children's cabinet. I went to the then city manager, Mr. Ambrosino, said, can we form a children's cabinet? As a result of that, we brought in the community, and what can we do? And so we were able to get not only SR dollars, but ARPA funds to service the mental health needs of not just kids in Chelsea Public Schools, any child in Chelsea, any child. So we were the forerunners and getting Cartwheel Care up and running. Thank you, Dr. Jennings and his amazing staff. We were the first district to do online teletherapy for students because the need was so great. When the kids came back from the pandemic, we assessed every single one of them, did mental health screenings. And we will do the same with the kids that are coming. We will assess, do mental health screenings, so that way they can get plugged in. We are also the first district to use Alongside app. The kids can use their phone. It's an app called Alongside, where we piloted this year in secondary. And kids can access this app, and then it pings us when there's a serious issue. Now we do have to turn it off on the weekends because we're not, we need to rest too. We need to fill our cups so that way we can pour into our children. So I was freaking out. At first I asked Dr. Jennings, I was like, whoa. What's going to happen if there's an emergency on the weekend? Are we responsible? But then if it's a serious emergency, we will address it. But so we are always looking at the mental health of our students. So that's something that we're well equipped. We will screen the students, and again, it's that wraparound services, and then get them plugged into to school. And we are really good at what we do with educating we have recently changed our office. It used to be the Office of English Language Learners. But we changed it. I changed it recently, about a year ago. It's the Office of Multilingual Learners, because we have multiple languages in our community, not just English, not just Spanish, but we have many learners. So we changed that to the MLE office, our multilingual office. And so we are, and then we assess grade levels. We do diagnostics, and then we also assess for language. And then we place. So there's a lot that happens at the intake, and then of course our teachers are amazing. They work extremely hard. I always say I will put our teachers against any other teachers in the suburbs, because our teachers can teach because they have to, and we have to get stuff done on the school side, because our kids don't have the kids we have in front of us right now. We can't wait. And so there's always a sense of urgency in the school department to get things done, to hurry up and order supplies and all this, because our kids are sitting in front of us now. And it's a child's education. And so we operate with a sense of urgency.
Thank you. So finally, Pastor Myrna has a question.
No, I don't have a question. I have to.
Okay.
Perdónenme, forgive me, but I'm going to speak in Spanish. Okay? Because I have a lot of people here from my church who have no clue what you're saying. So, mis hermanos, nosotros comenzamos hablando aquí sobre la iglesia episcopal porque no tiene una casa. Okay, I'm talking about you, Pastor George, not having a home. Okay? Y ellos necesitan un hogar. Están aquí, nosotros lo queremos, lo tenemos aquí como hermanos en Cristo. Amén. Pero yo me pregunto, de todo lo que han hablado, ¿no? de los presupuestos que hay en la ciudad, de cómo uno ayuda al otro, el trabajo que hace Roca, el trabajo que hace la escuela. Todos están haciendo tremendo trabajo. ¿Okay? Todas las agencias están haciendo un trabajo fantástico. Pero ese no es el problema. El problema es el pecado que hay en el mundo, y como la gente no conoce a Cristo, ¿no? Está la avaricia y todos los pecados que agarran a nuestra comunidad. Porque nuestra comunidad, como hispanos, somos una comunidad traumatizada. Nosotros tenemos trauma y ninguna de las agencias ha podido bregar con el trauma de nosotros. Entonces, ¿cómo es que la iglesia puede trabajar con la comunidad o con las agencias, ¿no? Para ayudar al pueblo que está traumatizado? Porque aunque la escuela hace su buen trabajo, los niños de nosotros todavía vienen aquí y lloran porque son bullied. ¿Entiendes? Entonces, ¿cómo un padre brega con eso? Y esa carga se le tira encima al pastor. ¿Y cómo nosotros bregamos? Entonces, ¿cómo nosotros hacemos un partnership para bregar con esas situaciones? ¿Ok? ¿Cómo es que una persona que tiene un hogar o una casa y alquila y tiene algunos problemas y va a la ciudad para ayuda, y la ciudad, en vez de buscar la forma de ayudar a esa persona, le pone más trabas, más problemas, y no los resuelve? Necesitamos buscar la manera de resolver el problema, no hacerlo más grande. Yo tengo personas en mi congregación que están traumatizadas y el sistema no lo ayuda, ¿no? Dándole más dinero no siempre resuelve, porque la renta todavía es igual y hoy las arreglé este mes, pero el mes que viene tenemos el mismo problema. Entonces, ¿cuál es la solución? Y eso es lo que estamos buscando, ¿no? Y perdónenme que yo tuve que saltar a ver, pero no aguantaba más. Porque yo tengo personas aquí que tienen problemas pagando renta, que tienen niños en la escuela. Y los mandan bien y los niños regresan medio salvajes. Entonces, ¿cómo nosotros podemos trabajar juntos para bregar?
Amen.
respond. Okay. I try. En español, briefly. Buenas noches, en primer lugar, y uno, me disculpo porque no hubo interpretación para las personas que hablan español. Yo soy la representante estatal en países de Latinoamérica, soy diputada, la primera diputada de Chelsea y de Everett, y les puedo decir que creo que Pastora Mirna, los puntos son muy fuertes y creo que tienes toda la razón. Yo llevo 8 años, empecé como concejal a los 23 años en la política local de Chelsea y ahora soy diputada a nivel del Estado y los problemas son grandes y no se trata de cuál es la solución, porque si supiéramos cuál es la solución no tuviéramos el problema y hace años se hubiera solucionado la situación, pero la realidad es que cuando hablamos de los pecados, ¿verdad? La crianza, los padres son vitales en la crianza de los hijos. Para mí, mi mamá me crió sola, sin papá, soltera, sin dinero, con los mismos retos. Mi mamá me crió en los años 90 y los problemas y los retos eran los mismitos, excepto que ella ganaba $4 la hora trabajando en una fábrica y ahora pues 30 años después gana 18, así que por quarter, ¿okay? Le daba 25 centavos al año. Y los retos eran iguales, cómo voy a pagar la renta, cómo voy a pagar el daycare, y hoy en día es peor, porque ahora buscar un babysitter te cuesta lo mismo que una hipoteca. Es lo mismo, tienes que pagar la renta, más la hipoteca, más el carro, más la comida. Entonces, cuando me preguntas cuál es la solución, no sé cuál es la respuesta, cuál es la solución, pero nosotros, no sé, te voy a meter aquí en el mío, al gerente de la ciudad, tenemos que ser puentes. Cuando la pastora Mirna tenga un problema, que la pastora Mirna, en vez de tratar de solucionarlo ella sola, que tenga acceso directo a nosotros. Yo como diputada, usted me dice a mí, fíjese que fulanita, y esto pasó con una iglesia, y le doy este ejemplo, una señora se cayó, fue al hospital aquí en Chelsea, la humillaron, se rehusaron a atenderla porque no tenía seguro médico y la mandaron a la casa, lo cual era ilegal. Y tuvo que ir ella donde la pastora. El pastor era un pastor, fue donde su pastor, y fue el pastor que me llama a mí para conseguirle a esa señora cobertura médica. Algo que pudo haber pasado en el hospital. Le pudieron haber dado su cobertura médica, no tenían que negarle asistencia. Y entonces esos son los puentes que yo creo que son cruciales, donde la pastora puede venir, Judith, tengo un problema en el Estado o una demanda o lo que sea, ayúdame, Fidel, gerente de la ciudad, tengo un problema a nivel municipal, ayúdame, ayuda a mi gente, y así, esa no es una solución grandiosa, ¿no? Pero es un acceso a recursos. Y lo segundo es en cuestión del costo de vivienda, y que lo comenté en inglés, pero no tuve la oportunidad de comentárselo con ustedes. En mayo, el Congreso del Estado y el Senado, junto a la gobernadora, vamos a evaluar un proyecto de ley que va a proveer $4 billones para la creación de casas a bajo costo, casas asequibles, ya sea creación de casas nuevas o la preservación de casas. Porque el verdadero problema que tenemos en este estado es que el costo de vivienda es muy alto. Una persona, para poder comprar una casa que cuesta $900,000, porque eso es lo que cuestan ahora las casas, tiene que ganar $300,000 al año. Y eso es imposible porque no hay suficientes casas, viviendas, y tenemos que construir más. Entonces los problemas son diversos, son grandes, de nivel escolar, no solo escolar, pero en cuestión de vivienda, en cuestión de salud. Es injusto que un latino vaya a un hospital y que le digan, no tiene nada, esa tosecita no es nada, y a los 6 meses es un cáncer terminal. Entonces esas son las realidades de nuestra comunidad, pero tenemos que trabajar juntos, no menospreciar a la iglesia, porque muchos de nosotros, yo soy gran cristiana, y esa es mi ancla, mi Dios es mi ancla, y estar en mi posición es muy difícil, y hay momentos que yo digo, Dios mío, yo no quiero este vaso, no quiero esta responsabilidad, pero sé que Dios me puso aquí por un motivo y voy a seguir ese motivo. No me sé todas las respuestas, pero voy a hacerlo con la mano de Dios. Okay?
I just wanted to add to that in regard to Deborah asked for translator, but they didn't get translated on their last. No worries. And just thinking about Faith in Blue and the community that, with the policing community, and it's not only with crime, but it's for mental health. It's for issues that arise with families that the police department, Dan Cortez leads a Faith in Blue. It's community in policing. And it not only community in policing, it's faith-based organizations to collaborate with the community and with policing to get assistance, to get support, to get resources, and whether that be through mental health or a housing crisis, we need to tap into that because we need to hold them accountable. Faith in Blue happens once a year, and you know, we come together and it's a kumbaya and we have great ideas, and the faith-based organizations were there and present and having conversations about how do we help our community. And that, I think, Pastor, is something that needs to be tapped into because they had great ideas and the pastors came and they were going to start a coalition and outreach, and you know, when a crisis arises, the pastor can call the community person, the pastor can call the police department and speak with Dan, and it's not happening. So we need to hold them accountable for such resources for you to tap into when your congregation members come to you and say, this is what I need help, because that's something that every year I say, you know what, we're going to show up and we're going to have a conversation, but to be honest, I didn't last year because I think it needs to be more intentional and more accountable. And folks, you know, our pastors, as I started this saying that our base is religion, our base as Black people, as Latinos, is the church. So what does that, you know, bringing that to the community and looking at community policing, faith-based organizations, and the community itself, we need to do better at tapping into those resources.
That's true. So as we wrap it up, less than a minute, okay, starting with you, Rizan. How would you welcome or make everyone welcome in Chelsea in less than a minute?
Yeah, really tough question. I would have language justice across every space, every meeting, every public meeting, every event should be multilingual, as we said, interpreted. I would make sure that the faith-based community is meeting and integrated and meeting just as much as we all are as the nonprofit community. And I would be a kind person, right? We should start being more kind as a community, as a people, and welcome people who are different from us, who have different backgrounds, who have different beliefs. We wouldn't be such a polarized society if we were actually kind to one another and thought of each other as people instead of, as you said, you know, right, disagree, you know, stigmatized individuals.
Thank you. Yes.
I can't talk in less than a minute, but I'm going to try. I would start with representation matters, and I think that we talked about having a seat at the table. I think that we all need to practice that and really be intentional. And I would say that while we are protecting and serving parts of a community, we need to remember the whole community and to be more inclusive and not to be afraid to use the words like inclusive, equity, diversity, because those words are kind of a taboo, but just to continue to uplift the community as a whole. And I would just continue to do what we do, working together in partnership and welcoming all. At organizations coming through, we have Latinos, we have whites, we have blacks, all coming together for a common purpose and just continue to uplift the community as one.
As a new city manager, what I've been doing is making this office more visible and more accessible. In the first 90 days, I'm 95 days in the job, I was intentional of not being in City Hall, of not being in my office, of not focusing on email, of being out in spaces, of doing listening sessions, even in some churches. And I certainly haven't spoken to every church, but it is my intention to do so. I think that I come from a country where you don't talk with government, you hide from government. I come from a country where you don't speak bad about government or you go to jail. And I think that we need to all model Jesus in many ways. Faith is not in the church. Faith is in the community, right? And being out with the people as opposed to being in circles of power. So that's my intention.
Thank you.
I'll try to be quick, but I get 30 seconds at the start because I have to interpret. Lo voy a decir en español. First, I will say treat people with grace. Number one. Number two, I will say control the controllables. There are things that are in our control. There are things that are not. How can we find people that we can partner with to be successful? And number three, I will say, and it's something I try to exercise often, is when I think about legislation, when I think about policy, always question if it's helping this group of people, who is it affecting? And what can we improve? En español, la pregunta fue, what was the question again? So I can translate?
So if you were to welcome anyone in Chelsea, make Chelsea inclusive,
Yes.
what would you do?
You see, I answered the question. I just don't remember the question. La pregunta es ¿cómo le daremos la bienvenida a personas nuevas que deciden hacer de Chelsea esta ciudad? Entonces mi respuesta siempre es tratar a personas con misericordia. ¿Es grace the way you say, pastora? Grace, misericordia.
Gracias.
Con gracia. Bueno, tratar a nuestra gente con gracia, no importa de quién sea o de dónde venga o qué idioma hable. Lo tercero es saber que tenemos que controlar lo controlable como legisladora. Hay cosas que puedo controlar, hay cosas que están fuera de mi control, pero cómo podemos trabajar juntos para arreglar las cosas que deben de arreglarse. Y lo tercero, para mí, que es sumamente importante cuando estoy pasando proyectos de ley, es siempre preguntarme si este proyecto de ley beneficia a un grupo de personas, cómo afecta a otras y qué podemos hacer para mejorar pues esta política. Entonces esas son mis tres respuestas a cómo yo respondo a tratar de darle la bienvenida a todos, independientemente de eso.
And I would say, as my panelists said, be kind. And then I would say, do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
Amen.
The golden rule. And then I would also say, smile. And I'm a former kindergarten teacher, so I'd say, give somebody a hug.
Okay.
Hugs are universal.
Okay. Hello? Oh, good. So, we want to bring this to an end. Why don't you just put your hands together for our panelists? So just to recap, we talk about kindness, representation martyrs, partnership, community visibility of City Hall and the City Manager's Office, listening to sessions, faith is in the community, and treat others with grace. Always think about who is before you when you write the policy. That's very important. And do unto others as you would like others to treat you. Also, fundamentally, tomorrow is our dinner, so we hope you have a ticket to come to our 147th anniversary dinner. A lot of good food, but please come and support it. All proceeds go towards our building fund, and we really appreciate any initiative to make that possible. Again, just to come back to it, we need a church. Okay? So whatever way we can You can make that happen, city manager. You don't have to say you're supporting the church, you're supporting an institution. But we need a church, okay? And we've been here and we're still working, aren't we? We're still doing the work, okay? So please think about People's AME Church. It is our commitment and desire to do what we can to support Chelsea, because Chelsea is our home, okay? This is where we are. So with that said, please, let's put our hands together again for all of them. So thank you for spending the time. Again, I want to say thank you to Pastor Herner and the church for allowing us to use the facility here. People's, put your hands together for Pastor Herner. So that's our space on the other side. You can just go through there and see our space, and we are grateful. Every Sunday we are there to have services, and on Sunday we are having our anniversary service. You are welcome to be a part. It's going to be great music and great sermon, but come and be inspired. Okay, on that note, I want to say thank you for those of us watching us. I want to say thank you very much. This has been a public discussion on blacks in Chelsea, and race with respect to inclusivity. And it's been a pleasure to have the city managers, the rep, and everyone here. So thank you for listening. God bless you.